I'm comfortable that we're gonna have all this worked out by tomorrow.
MK2
What do we have? EAU allocation chart.
I would think that they were down to, I think, 7. So they should have gotten that
So
resolved.
that's I've already mentioned.
Stephen may have an update.
Steven, by the way, how you feeling? What, you kind of under the weather?
There's not many
You sound kind of cute.
books
Is it called EAU-itis?
I was able to cut it off, so they get too much. One of those holes that starts. Luckily, it didn't proceed. So when can you? But it's still,
Do what?
when you can abstain, only in the event of conflict of interest. I thought there was, thought if you had, I thought there was another ruling about, had something to do with majority, but. Yeah, I know there's because even though we represent the community, we have no. We wouldn't be obligated checking something.
You had the opportunity to recuse yourself.
Sure. Or, it's already set in. The only one parcel that had yellow. Again, I still want to go back to it.
Right, but the and I fold pages. See, I fold
Let's
pages.
do it. Let's get it going.
So it makes sense.
Okay, we're gonna call the meeting back to order, and I think we are now moving to, Pelican Preserve, the rain letter, and you said there were some additional.
Yes, there was, what was on the agenda today was 2 expenditures related to the Pelican Preserve project and coming out of the bond funds, and basically that was bank restoration, and also what they're going to do is just have a $25,000 purchase order at Ferguson for parts so they can get the prices set, and during the year when they're doing this work, have their contractor pick them up. And it saves them the sales tax too when we do it that way through them. And Mr. Gephardt also asked me, he had 2 other proposals with Copeland to do similar work, one for $10,175 and one for $15,775, and these were approved by PPAC, but it was after our agenda items were due, so he wanted to see if he could walk it through, get the approval with the others.
The first one was
$175, and that's to Copeland Southern, and that's for drainage repair on Lake 25 off Avila Circle. And he had a second proposal saying with Copeland Southern Enterprises, $15,775, and that's damage repair for Lake 29. And the other 2 items are on the
The
agenda.
other 2 are already in the advance agenda.
Yes, sir.
Move for approval of all 4 items.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Thank you.
opposed? Hearing none.
Sorry, Phil.
Okay.
He got up to speak already.
This brings us to C, which is lake bank restoration funding, and I think Tony, I'm gonna give this one to you.
Well, thank you very kindly for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
With substantial input and work by Mr. Tinkle, working with Russ Wire, Liz Moore, and Stephen Bloom, we've gone through and evaluated the certain aspects of the assessment role and recognized certain adjustments and corrections needed to be made before we asked the board to approve it as the preliminary assessment role. We had a couple of conversation yesterday and a lengthy conversation this morning. So at this time, what you have with you as far as the assessment roles attached to the assessment methodology, there were some revisions to be made primarily to the commercial and business parcels, I'll call them. Not to the text, not to the body of any of the reports, but to the roles attached as far as allocation of VAUs to the various parcels. As a result, and we anticipate having that finalized by tomorrow, but no later than Monday. And so we'd like to ask the board, and I don't want to ask the board to adopt a resolution and send out notices with a role that we're not comfortable with from a staff perspective or consultant perspective. And we will have that level of confidence tomorrow or Monday, requesting that the items 6C be continued to a date and time certain, and we're requesting next Thursday at 3 PM in the boardroom, unless Mrs. Flaherty's not available.
I'm having a tooth pulled.
Well, this is also another tooth pulling. What time is your tooth?
This one's gonna hurt a lot more, I can tell you.
Well, you may be good, they might be numb. What time is your appointment?
11 in the morning.
Oh.
I'm just saying that because that's why I scheduled it, so it wasn't on a CDD meeting day. 'Cause-
Oh, or next Friday. I mean, I hate to do that to the board.
No, it's okay. If I make it, I make it. If I don't, somebody will have to drive me.
We can drive, yeah, Chris will pick you up.
I'll drive you to distract you.
Chris will pick you up and,
What was the date on that?
With the presidential limousine pick
the,
you
the
up.
the 27th. And again, we wanted to obviously take care of this today. But there were some questions that were raised and some good questions, and we had some good analysis and good discussions and good data and fact checking that resulted in this request.
And what time is
I'll be out of town all next week.
Can you appear by phone, Doug?
Uh,
You can't appear by phone if you're not available.
I'm gonna be in Stanford.
Looks like it'll be three of us.
Stanford, Florida?
3.5, Kathy.
Oh, Stanford, okay.
Stanford.
The before, Miss Flaherty will be here.
What time?
Is 3 acceptable to the board? If
What-
that's requested?
What day have we agreed upon? Have we agreed?
Thursday, next week from today.
The 20,
Thursday,
3 o'clock.
Thursday, the 27th?
yes, please.
At 3
What time?
p.m.
3?
Yes, so at the end of, at the end of this meeting, as opposed to adjourning, I would request that the meeting be continued, specifically this item be continued to 3 PM, same location, on April 27th, 2017.
That's my motion.
Unless I die on
Well, that'll be at the end of the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I apologize.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, we could not get the sign off from the consultant doing this based upon the issues we had at hand. It was that simple.
that.
It was that simple.
I have
Yes, ma'am, go
May
ahead.
I talk? Okay. I do have some other issues here with this. I guess I was busy over the weekend. I've looked up under Florida Water Management, they have grants for pond restoration, and I mean grants. I don't mean loans, I mean grants that we are eligible for. Has that ever been looked into? And also, under your environment protection, there's grants there, under Florida, and under the Washington DC federal government, there are grants there that are available specifically for pond restoration. So I was wondering if any of that was looked into, because these grants are, we don't have to pay the grants back. We've already paid the money to the government, so it's not money, it's our money we're still using. And I'm just concerned that.
I'm all for that, Kathy, but the biggest problem you run into when you run into grants is usually there is a test
Wait,
and what your financial capability is to pay. And I can tell you right now, with our median household income here, gonna be tough.
but with the grant, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's always the verbiage you use in the grant, okay?
No, it's an
And
application, yeah.
that's the most important thing. And the grant is, I know this is, but if the grant is like for, we'll say 100,000, even if it's not covering everything, if you ask for less than what they ask for, by, having done this to get things, they usually grant it, because you're not asking for it, you're trying to ask for less, so they think that's really, I found that out.
I'm all for, and we've talked about this, we even had the last, when Joe DeCerbo came a year or so ago, a company that was going to aid us in getting grants, but we turned it down, so. But I'm all for getting back on that train and trying to find grants.
We paid the guy who worked at Tallahassee a lot of money
It's,
to get us
That's
something,
the-
and he got us nothing.
that's the game you play
Well,
on
and
grants.
my understanding on that was, and I know that we decided to end his engagement with us, but that the first time that he went to get money for us, that it landed on the governor's desk, and that was where it didn't get signed, is pretty good. Most people don't get that far the first time. Just
When it
wanted
comes
to
down to
throw that
grants,
out.
it's luck.
It still meant we
Luck.
got zero.
Yeah, it did, but, you know,
Tough to get.
just
Um,
saying.
I'd like to make a statement or two, if I may, before we
Certainly,
go
go
any
right ahead.
further. I think I made it clear 3 hours ago, but I continue to believe that we should be operating on a $6 million basis, which Mr. Tinkle mentioned a while back, and do our court validation and everything on that basis, at least this first time around. We have 5 ponds totaling $4.4 million, not one of which has been finished yet. We don't have a perfect track record on this business in the past. And we, even after if the first 5 ponds are done perfectly, we'll still have some money left over from the 6 to do 3, if not 4, that are on the second go-around. And we will give our residents enough time to swallow what these assessments are gonna be. What I saw in the advance agenda before this meeting gave me a lot of indigestion. You're looking at me strangely.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the assessment rolls that were in that.
You're talking about the bond validation?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a totally different issue, Bill. Totally different issue. Keep in mind, the bond validation, it has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with a commitment of this board for expenditure of money. What it's doing is giving us the right to go to a 20-year term instead of a 5.
But
That's
if-
all.
And if you limit that to $6 million, I'm all with you.
But then, Bill, we do it again and we pay
Then
another $50,000 in fees.
Well, Tony told me 30, but I'm not gonna quote him on that.
If it's uncontested, not challenged, then you say-
After today, it's gonna be 50.
I understand that there may be a little more expense involved, but I think we're taking our residents too far too fast on this thing, and I think it's gonna come back to bite us.
Well, Bill, you're kindly noted that you live in Pelican Preserve. We live here in Gateway. You've got Sugar Daddy paying for yours over there. We don't. And we've got to take and do action on this. I'm in a community where I hear this every single day, and nobody is having a problem, especially when they hear, you mean to tell me that we got $6 million and my share of that was $65?
The share of.
That works out to
$4,000. It's gonna be
$5 a month.
$4,000 the way you
No.
have it listed here.
No.
And by the way, I resemble your insinuation that I am not working for this entire.
But you're getting it over there.
Gateway CDD. No, that doesn't have a darn thing to do with it. I am authorized to represent the entire Gateway CDD, and that's what I'm doing.
I understand, Bill, but the issue is there's a big difference. Your people over there are getting what our people want over here, the same thing, and you're standing in the way of it.
Well, here's
I
the,
am not standing in the way of
Well,
anything.
this
You're
is what you
trying to
gotta
take
do.
us too far too fast, and we're gonna have some blowback on this.
Have you seen anybody marching in here, or the line at the door?
They haven't seen this yet.
It's all over the community.
And
We
we're
live
gonna-
here. I hear it every day, and once people hear it, their deal is, well, why wouldn't you do that? Get it up there to $20 million, whatever the number is, and not pay that same legal and engineering fee over and over and over again. It makes no sense.
let me simplify, because we had this conversation, I think.
Yeah, we had this meeting,
when-
discussion
when
last
Bill-
meeting.
When Bill wasn't,
He's getting-
when Bill wasn't here, and the way I looked at it, and the way I can justify it is,
Thanks.
it's basically, we're extending a line of credit. We're extending a line of credit with no obligation to pull from that line of credit.
Correct.
So by extending the bond validation to the ceiling, let's say that's 20 million, which we could not spend a dime over the 6 million unless it is board approved. What it allows us to do is save 50, 50K in modifications down the road. Now, what I would also recommend, because we basically paid someone $25,000 last year to put forth a grant that didn't complete that, and then we stopped right then. So if we're not willing to continue efforts to do grant funding, which if we save potentially $50,000 here, we could also move forward with looking at grant opportunities. So to simplify it again, Bill, I look at it as extending a line of credit with no obligation. As a matter of fact, there's restrictions on spending that money unless it goes through board approval. So it's simplifying the process. Now, I will say this before I end. We have 3 phase. How many phases in the pond project?
3 phases.
3 phases in the pond project. We're in phase 1 now.
5 of 13.
So we've got 5 of 13, and we are a little bit over budget on what we originally had considered.
A lot.
Because we
Right.
had the
So
5 toughest ponds.
Are we willing as a board to say our threshold was 6 million, and after that, we have no appetite to complete the rest of the lakes? And what kind of impact would that have on the community?
You are both, I'm doing a poor job of explaining to you where I am. And where I am is saying, I think when people see that you're gonna put a $4,000 assessment on their property, they're gonna.
But we're not putting a 4,000.
I see it right here.
Bill,
It's here.
that's the 20-year amortized deal of that.
I know.
So
I-
$4,000
I know
over-
what-
The
I know-
equivalent.
I know what it is. I know what it is.
And that assumes the entire 20.
You don't have to explain it to me,
Yes.
I know what it is, but it gives me indigestion. I've said my piece, I'm not gonna say another word.
And we may never reach that threshold, we may never spend that money, but we have to give ourselves leeway, because Doug's right, we can't say, okay, we finished pond number 9 and we're not doing anything more.
And I don't think Bill, I know from being on this board long enough, that's not Bill's intent, is to not complete this project. No one's got more heartburn than you around the cost of these ponds, because coming on this board, the last thing I wanted to do was to spend that money on, but I didn't understand why we just didn't put some backfill and do it for, a couple million, all of them. But I understood after a while why it was important to do it right and do it over a long period of time.
I agree with
Yeah,
all,
so I think we're all
I
on the
agree
same
with all
page.
of that.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is, extending this line of credit might put us in a position where it could save us some money if we so choose to go down that path. But I think, to Kathy's point, and there's even been other conversations, we need to look at either having a grant manager that's going to start facilitating and researching some potential grants. Some of them will do it, not pro bono, but they'll do, at least I've heard, will do it, and then if they're warranted the grant, then they get paid through that grant funding. Or
No, they will not, grant funding money cannot, on any agency, be used for reimbursement on basically
grant
a
manager?
finder fee. No. You
Okay,
pay
well, I
that
thought it was
separate.
something that Joe
No,
had
you
said
can't do that.
about.
No, can't do that.
Regardless, I think we need to look at how we can, proactively go and seek out grant
EPA stuff,
grant
that.
funding, whether that's securing someone or whatever, because
That's what you gotta do.
that could save us millions of dollars.
We gotta get
that-
somebody in here
That
doing
could
that.
unburden our residents.
And Tyler actually was gonna address that, because I think you had talked to us one time about there are grants.
For this type of work, there's pretty much 2 that are sponsored by the state and by the EPA. One is called the TMDL grant. It's called a Total Maximum Daily Load, is what it stands for, grant. And the other one is a Section 319 grant. 319 is, I think, a section of the Florida statute to deal with non-point source. We applied for both. We've applied for both twice now. We were unsuccessful both times. The CDD actually retained the services of a grant writer. His name is Ryan Ruske. He was unsuccessful. It's just, those grants are specifically geared towards waters that impact impaired water bodies. We don't discharge an impaired water body. It's almost as simple as that. Yes, there's a possibility you might get some money out of those, but as long as other, I don't know the best way to put this, other higher scoring applications are submitted, they're not going to select Gateway. They get $5 million annually for those grant programs.
And there's no other than those two, there's no other grants that you know of?
You can go, there's national level grants you can apply for. There's also direct state appropriations. Gateway went that way. I don't remember the guy's name. But, you know, like Ms. Feinberg was saying, it made it through legislature and it got vetoed by the governor. So you've gone down that road. You can certainly continue going down that road. But as far as the two state level grants, you don't have a high success rate. There's national level grants. There's a lot of them out there you can apply for. But I will say this. Even if you get money from them, there's a lot of strings attached to those grants. Specifically water quality grants. You're basically, the issue is this. They're going to be water quality grants. Well, the issue is they make you prove
Don't wanna
that
say
you
that.
improve the waters. So there's, you know, we were successful in getting Port Charlotte. They got almost $1 million out of the TMDL grant 2 years ago that I wrote for them. I mean, I wrote the grant. The issue was, not an issue, but they ended up spending about $400,000 out of that just to go do all the monitoring and back end work that was required to get that money. So there's a lot of strings attached to grants. I'll just say it that way.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I may comment, I've looked into those programs, and it was the same thing with the TMDL. You have to be cleaning up an impaired body, which we don't do. And unfortunately, the higher scores come from lower income communities, and the ones that aren't doing a good job. It's like getting a grant to rebuild your utility system. If you're running a good system and making money, forget it. If you're negligent, your system's falling apart, here's the money.
Flint,
That's the way
Michigan.
the system
Yeah.
works, squeaky wheel.
Okay.
Okay, so we are going to continue this item till next week. I will move to, I guess we don't have any walk-on, oh, sorry, Casey.
Yes,
Yeah.
just to answer, Mr. Guy, the 3 million up to 4.4 is 30%. Okay, so you'll know how he was wondering, so.
Okay. We don't have any walk-on items, thank God. And I'll move to supervisor comments, and I'll start down here with Mr. Tindall.
This end, well, first of all, as I understood from our district manager, that I need to appropriately request his assistance in procuring 3 park consultants that will come in here and talk to us and put together a plan that we'll look at, on which we will select one. And I think probably what we would want to do is to check with the county and make sure that when we do that, that we keep that $130,000 in play to pay for these people that's doing it. So we might have to come up with a scope of work, but I'd be more than happy to work with you. But my motion is to authorize District Manager Chris to go out and bring to us at our next meeting 3 park-type consultants to consider for putting together their vision of how Gateway could handle its parks
And all you're looking
and
for
address
is
these issues.
just names for leads at this point.
Yeah, bring
Okay.
3 firms that would come in. First of all, I would tell them that what we're going to do is we're going to ask you, we're going to tell you what we are looking for, and we want you to go out, look at our parks, and come back with what your vision is for Gateway. And then we select based on that and other qualifications they have, and whatever Tony says we have to do to meet the statute.
Which would be a more
You're
formal
saying 2 different
solicitation
things.
process even if
Oh,
we
yeah,
have
we'll
that.
definitely would have to do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So you're talking about going through an RFP process?
Yeah,
Ultimately, that's what you would do.
Under the CCNA, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think you're talking about 2 different things.
No, just for the, our parks. I don't want to go out, I certainly don't have, and I think I have as much as qualifications as anybody, to go out there and design a bocce field and/or a, what do you call it, a
Oh, I'm sure-
pickleball
I'm sure
court
you do.
on there. But I want somebody to put this whole thing together and have a plan for Gateway.
But are we gonna interview landscape architects before they give us a plan?
No, what I would do is I would have them come in, talk to us, and we give them what our ideas are on the plan. Then they go back and come back to us with what their presentation is. Then we go out for an RFQ.
You don't think Chris can tell them what our ideas are?
Oh, he can do that. I don't have a problem with that.
And that's what I want.
I just want to get the authorization approved so that he can do it.
Well,
And I just want to ask, do we really need for him to bring this back at the next meeting? He may not have the time to
What-
put all this
what-
together before the next meeting. I wanted to make sure of that before. I
You can
don't
just say,
know.
I've got 2 or 3 potential consultants that would like to work with us. I think that would be
Yeah,
sufficient.
well, the first thing I do is
It doesn't have
call.
to be anything formal, just, hey, we've got a couple people we can start.
In those cases, a lot of times you can look through Lee County and
Yeah.
and the city sites.
Yeah,
and the
that's what I do.
advertisements they put out, who's responded to
Yeah.
those types of
That's all I do.
presentations and contacts.
So that's my motion.
I'll second. I don't know if we need a motion.
Any, yeah, I don't know if you need a motion, but we'll do it.
He feels safer with it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No. The next one I'd like to have, and I don't know that we need a motion for this, other than the fact it seems like we're in the motion-making mood. Definitely authorize Chris and Tyler to proceed with the work necessary to come up with the pricing of a change order to do the golf course side of Lake 116 and 126 for board consideration.
And then who is also gonna accompany the really the cost benefit, the justification?
Well,
for doing
there is no such thing as a cost benefit when it's an order of the state.
What?
I mean, there's no,
Well,
you do it.
and-
The issue that you have to do is where you'd have a cost benefit would you be doing something as simple as bringing out the fill, leveling it, compacting it, and putting down cocoa mat, which is what we hope to believe be a very inexpensive means, or if you had to go the full-scale route we're going right now, which is clicking off at better than $200 a foot. Now, that would be a
Well,
cost benefit.
What, the cost benefit I'm looking for is what's the benefit of doing it now and spending the cost now versus, you know, at some point down the road? Because it wasn't
Well,
included, it
well,
wasn't
the only
included in
way-
the original.
the only way you could do
original
that-
assessment,
the only
and
way-
you were part of that, so if.
No, I was not.
You weren't a part of the original?
No. My desire to this board was, and on the record, you will find vehemently
Okay.
that I said, do the golf course while you're in there doing the
Okay,
lake.
all right, I thought you were, and
No.
that's fine.
But the issue is that the cost analysis could be, is we just go to these contractors and say, what is the cost difference of doing this now, while you're here mobilized, versus waiting and coming back?
Yeah, that's
Now,
what I'd
that's a
like to see.
cost,
That's what I'd
now
like
that's a
to see.
cost.
Yeah, that's what I'd like
Yeah,
to see.
and he can ask that.
Yeah.
And it may be, as we've talked, it may be that we run into a problem of just the availability of contractors. This just may be a dream. We can't get anybody to do it because we have these other commitments. And I certainly do not want to be in any position of stating that this would supersede finishing the 5 ponds.
Yeah, no,
That is first.
I think you're
Well,
clear.
And to a point Ed made earlier about people wanting their lakes done, I'm hearing more and more, when is my lake gonna get started?
And that's what I'm trying to explain to Bill, and didn't do a very good job of it a while ago. A lot of people want their lakes done. And so, and I'm not hearing a thing about the $65 standing in the way of it. The next thing I had is just a real quick one from Tony is DMS litigation. That seems to be, did we ever get this resolved?
It's not litigation. I have a letter from the state attorney's office. I'll include it in the next agenda.
Okay.
They declined,
Who
they declined to prosecute, state attorney's office.
So in other words, our case is weak,
Kaput.
From a criminal perspective, they said
Dead in the
none.
water.
Yes.
okay? Learned that lesson. Stephen, I asked the last time and you weren't here, but I'd like to see a final breakdown of what the cost of that road turnover project was.
Okay.
All cost added as to what we actually spent on that project being done. But I don't want the water, what was it, Tyler, the irrigation strengthening component of it, that 500,000, that had nothing to do with the road. We just
okay.
threw that in.
I understand.
Area 9 easement on the other side, I guess we just got something today
Yeah.
on that, and I guess our problem is Elle and I went out there again, and I mean to do the sampling, and it is a nightmare. We have a hard time just getting back there and take a sample. How Aquagenics can get back there and they don't go back there. We're gonna get in trouble if we don't get them access to get back there and get that pond
I'll
taken
push it
care
along.
of.
I'll push it.
Okay, that's everything.
The nice thing is, they're still on our side, South Florida.
Good.
Based upon this letter, I think, I don't know, Chris provided to me or April, it was sitting on my desk.
That's all I had.
They had- They were nice about it.
I have just a couple things. One, Chris, at what point are we getting the final,
Here you go.
or at least the an update on the meter project. Maybe about next meeting, we can get an update there and, you know, where we're at with final payment.
This is nice.
And,
Payments kind of stuck up legal, and we're down to about 42 meters to install, and I've been bugging them, you know, to get out and get them, because they're the big
all right,
ones.
so
but-
we're still in process
So
then.
47.
Okay, all right. And Chris, can you do me a favor when, and Ed, I think I've talked to you about this before. So when you go down Griffin towards Stony Brook, that large area on the right, that when the rain season comes.
Griffin towards Stony Brook?
I'm sorry, Gateway Boulevard down towards Stony Brook, where the, what do you call the?
Bubble ups?
The bubble ups are above grade or whatever you call it, and it just creates this huge standing water. It creates issues for
You can
maintenance.
thank the Worthington, Lennar people for that fiasco design that this, not this board, this entity allowed to happen about 16 years ago. All that was taken care of by pipe, and somebody consented to allow them to do it with a ditch.
That
And
was never designed.
So,
it was, yes,
Just done.
just done.
so if
We got
Chris, maybe
tattooed
if you can
again.
take a look at that and see if there's a way we can tie in or do something to be able to drain that water into that, that master swell right there.
Well, the answer,
Or that
we've
bubble.
talked about it before, and that's going basically building a French drain and/or a solid pipe with inlets all the way up and down that deal to get the water into that
I mean,
crossing.
it's bad enough that we should at least.
Yeah, I got a couple, actually looked at that one time, we
Yeah.
were worried about the water backing up in the road.
Going across the road.
Yeah.
We, got some proposals to pipe it out,
I mean-
and it was around $25,000.
All right.
It
And
wa-
so
it
if
wasn't-
you've got any
wasn't bad.
creative ideas, that would be great, because, I mean, not only mosquitoes and
No, it's a
everything
mess.
else, it just creates tons of problems.
It's horrible.
April, when, we talked about a capital, project plan process, a new revised, because I would imagine we're getting in the point within the year that we need to probably start having initial conversations on capital planning for 2018, prioritization, and where we're at with our capital projects for 2017. Is that something, did you have a plan on when you were gonna bring that new process, or?
I'm not sure if it will be a fully new process. I know Stephen said that we had a conference call last week, I believe, and you've launched your budget
Yes.
process. And so basically, we need to probably schedule a meeting with staff and start working on presenting the capital project sheets that we fill out and put them together in a plan. You've got a document that we need to drop them in. I believe as far as the planning, what we need to decide is more of a visioning on, are we going to focus, are we gonna focus some dollars on the parks?
That's what we need.
Right, like the 5-year plan that Stephen puts
And that's
together.
almost a workshop, I would imagine. I would envision it being a workshop.
Right. And so that's what I was meaning as far as planning, actually visioning on where we want to start focusing those dollars.
You know, because I would love for us to get to a point in 2018 where, actually this year, where we have some input. What are our things we want to get done? We go through a prioritization and sequencing, planning.
Well, we
things-
talked about that meeting, get together.
Well, there's two things
We've
there.
gotta
I'm gonna
that
get
done.
to, I'm gonna get to that.
And then I have that meeting on
Okay,
Monday.
so there's a workshop around, kind of the planning process, because I would love to see in 2018 when, let's say Ed brings a lighting plan, we have a process that says, okay, is this on the 2018 approved? No. Do we have funding? Yes. Do we feel like it's a priority? Do we have capacity to complete it? And if that's a yes, then we make a motion to add it to to the plan for that year, and then it formally gets added, and we track it, and there's funding aligned to it. So I just want a little bit
Yeah.
tighter on, because I think this year we went a little outside the rails a little bit, and I'd like to get back on that. So, and I know you and I have talked about it in detail, and I know you have some very specific thoughts on better ways for us to do that. So if you can maybe look at that and figure out when would be a good time for us to do a work group or a working
Okay.
session. And the other thing is the board advance that the SERBO had recommended. I highly would advocate for us to do that, and we're at the time now. I think this new board's been in play for a while. We've got most of our staff in place, and I think we should move forward with that board advance.
And actually, last week I had talked to Chris about this, and Joe DeServo really liked your Vision 2020, your ideas on that. And I, with with the board's consent, would like to put you in charge of putting that together and
Okay.
getting that board advance scheduled and get it started.
Okay. If there's no objections, I would be more than happy to do it.
Doesn't sound like anybody's objecting.
You making that motion, Bill?
I'll take that over parking, being in charge of that all day long.
Bill motioned and I seconded, I guess you got it.
Okay, that's all I had on that. Yeah.
Mr. Goff?
I have nothing.
I have a couple of things, I'm sorry. Okay. I have requests like before, we need to look at the irrigation. I mean, we're talking about really bad irrigation.
Landscape irrigation?
Landscape irrigation.
It's horrible.
Thank you, it is. So, and they've been putting Band-Aids on it, literally, so we need to look at that. Also, today, when I went out with Mainscape, I requested, and I'm sorry, I did this without any of your permission. I requested that Mainscape, when they do a project, like in the median and Gateway, and didn't do anything about it for 2 months, that they give us a report and with the proposal, and with a time limit of how long it will take before it is finished.
So that's any work out of contract?
Any work they leave things. Have you not been in the scene going down Gateway where they have this little fence that's been there for 2
Oh, yeah.
months, and they haven't done anything?
Yeah.
So any work that they leave and say they're coming
I
back to.
thought it was Chris.
Is this a work order or is this normal contract?
This is the way normal contract, this is, and then they have a proposal if something is broken to bring to.
Why, I assume we have a staff that's watching them that would tell them, no, you don't do that.
That, they still do that,
Was-
okay?
Then they're ignoring our staff.
Yes, they are. And that
That's
way
easy to
I
solve.
asked that, and then say how
That's easy to
long
solve.
Really easy.
that it's going to
Yeah.
take to do.
That's right.
Is,
Estimated time of completion.
completion, right.
Is there not a
Okay.
ticket? I mean, shouldn't they be
trouble
doing
over
And I
a
said there
service
should be
ticket or something?
consequences. Should be.
They've started doing that recently, but it was right before New Year's, they had a line break up by Stony Brook on the side, and I called them a few times, and, oh, they aren't here, and the guy just left, and for a week.
Yeah,
it
I
sat
remember
there
that.
running, And then when I said, are you guys gonna get on this or not? I phoned the phone calls, they said, we went to fix it, but it's so soaking wet, we can't even get in down there. And they literally, when the guy left Friday afternoon, the line was broken, left it like that, left
Yeah.
the holiday.
And that's one of the things that when we look at
Hmm.
the new
Yeah.
landscaper, I would like to make sure that's in that contract that they have to answer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
amazing. 2 years at a time.
Anything else?
I think that's it today.
It's-
I only had just a couple things, and one of them was the work,
This-
yeah, that.
Board advance.
Yeah, the board advance. And this is a question, there's a patch of the asphalt close to Stony Brook. It's a big section of Gateway Boulevard that looks like it was repaired, replaced,
That was
dug up.
County
That's a couple
requirement
weeks ago.
for takeover.
What did we do?
The contractor goofed when he put it down the first time, so it had to be patched to get the county's approval to take it over.
Okay.
That's WCI segment though, isn't it?
No, it was our
Is it our
segment.
segment?
Our segment.
It's just all on
I
WCI
just was
segment too.
curious, because I don't go this way, I don't usually travel down Gateway Boulevard in this direction unless I'm coming to a board meeting. So-
Looks like the machine chattered and they got it too thin on the blacktop.
Okay.
It wasn't a hearing, and I sent it over to the HOA because they were doing that work on a Sunday night.
Mhm.
They pretty much finished it in about 4 or 5 hours, but it was just not adhering properly.
I saw a patch on
So
south
I
of the
will
7-Eleven.
entertain a motion to continue this meeting
Yeah.
to time certain next Thursday at 3 o'clock.
So move.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Yeah,
Any
it's like this,
opposed?
Ed. It's a piece
Nope.
like around,
No.
it's a piece like,
Motion, motion to carry on.
it's a piece like right around there, like that. Okay, 'cause I know it's like, it stands out like a,
Well, it's stand out like a sore
oh yeah,
thumb.
what the hell?
Everybody wonders, how did that happen?